Here's a question I don't think about all that often. Who are the good Democrats? Listen.
Hey Dinesh, I know that good Democrats today are in short supply, but who is your favorite Democratic president?
Wow. Well, I think I was asked a version of this question once before, but I'm going to answer it a different way. It's certainly true that Democrats, by and large, are a gang of scoundrels. I made this point in Hillary's America. The history of the party is one of deep corruption and bigotry and in some cases just criminal syndicates. And it goes all the way back to the beginning of the Democratic Party. Andrew Jackson was a patriot, but he was also a scoundrel. Now, if I were to make a list of the great presidents, you don't find too many Democrats. I would put Lincoln as number one. Washington, who was not Republican or Democrat, he was a member of the Federalist Party. Number two, Reagan, Teddy Roosevelt. Now, Trump is a little hard to evaluate because I'm not sure Trump is even finished. But Trump had a successful first term, although unbelievably turbulent because of the vehemence of the attacks on him. But where are the Democrats in this list? They're kind of hard to find. With Democrats, you need a lower standard because you know, by and large, you only have 3 or 4 who even were halfway decent. And I certainly would not include in that list people like FDR and Woodrow Wilson or LBJ. So these are standard Democrats that probably a lot of liberals would go, I revere FDR. FDR was a thug and a scoundrel. LBJ was, if anything, worse. So the half-decent Democrats to me are the following. There's Truman. There's JFK, who was obviously a flawed individual, but nevertheless, and very hardly held office for what, a year and a half, 2 years, 1960 to 1962. The Democrat I'm going to go with here is James Polk. Now, Polk himself was hardly admirable on every front. He was a slaveholder, and he was a protege of Andrew Jackson. And however, his achievement really is what he did with the country in general. Now, you have to remember that the United States was kind of a small country when Polk became the president. And Polk spearheaded the Mexican War, 1945 to 1948. And this was a controversial war. Abraham Lincoln, by the way, was on the other side of that war. Abraham Lincoln gave a series of speeches called the Speeches on the Spot Resolutions, where Abraham Lincoln accused Polk of unnecessarily starting this war with Mexico, supposedly because American soldiers had been attacked. And Lincoln's point was, show me the spot where they were attacked. His point was that Polk was kind of exaggerating or making it all up. But nevertheless, Polk, and this is a very rare case where Abraham Lincoln was sort of politically defeated here, Polk went ahead and fought a popular war against Mexico and won it. And as a result, a large chunk of previously Mexican territory, all the way to the Rio Grande, now became part of the United States. But Polk didn't even stop there. Polk also spearheaded the acquisitions of large territories of California, also a large part of the Oregon territory, and he did all this through a combination not just of force, but also of negotiation. So the Mexican War obviously was a triumph of force, although it was subsequently ratified by a treaty, Guadalupe Hidalgo, and then there was the Gadsden Purchase, and so Polk essentially in one term, I mean, here's a guy who served a single term, died in June of 1849, but within that space, he virtually doubled the size of the United States. And it was I don't know if this would have happened without Polk. And so here you've got a guy, kind of a mild-mannered character, who was somewhat seen as a political novice. And yet, I'm judging him solely by the result. The United States currently is a country that stretches, from sea to smiling sea. In other words, going all the way from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And the power and strength of the United States, the economic power, the military power, its influence in the world, all driven by the fact that the United States became a large geographical landmass and one that was able to develop its economic strength as well as its political and ultimately military strength. James Polk is the guy who played a critical role in making that happen. So if I had to pick, sort of reluctant to pick, but if I had to pick the best Democratic president, I would answer James Polk.